we finally got the P0101 code to get away with the cheap Amazon cold air intake. So just so you guys can see, no check engine on here at all. I'm just gonna turn on the light so you guys can see. No check engine on, no issues found, nothing. And as a report, I did a few reports just to make sure, and I just found it out the other day. So I had a P0101 code that kept coming over, and it's just like, it was so annoying. And I finally found the solution for it. I replaced so many parts, and it was something so simple. Trying to get the hood up. So the biggest issue with this with this aftermarket cold air intake is for the fact that this is 2.75 inch tubing, but the sensor would sit right up here where the original position would sit. Now when the air would come in, I have made myself a cover over here just so I don't get water, and I also made myself I have a sock over here just so water doesn't come up here. But when the air is coming in through there, the way that it's coming across is when it bends across and is straight up and down like this, it doesn't read properly, and it causes the issue of you're getting these sporadic air fluxes. So you could probably be reading like normal readings. So right here, normal reading is 2.282. It's 2 grams per second. It's dipping down to the ones, but it's perfectly fine. But the issue was that when you would have it up straight over here, so I can hold my phone up straight, it's not reading the air because the way that it comes in. So when you would go into the high RPM range, what would happen was that it's not reading all the air correctly, so your your long-term fuel trim over adjusts really quickly. So having it at a slight angle, so they called it clocking the actual tubing. I had to cut it from here and over here. Well, this is all right, but I had to cut it from over here, and I put a little grommet so this wouldn't leak out air. The biggest thing, I was checking out all the air intake leaks, because any air intake leak that you have will cause big issues with it. Because at first I had a leak on my catch can, which is a minor leak, but then I had a leak over here by my dipstick tube, and then one of my biggest leaks, which was an evap leak, was my gas cap. So I went with the aftermarket OEM until I finally just replaced the filler neck, because the issue was that over here was just messed up. So I went ahead and replaced it, and clocking it at a slight angle actually helps increase the performance and the responsiveness of it. So just to show you guys, the issue is still persistent on here, but it's not enough to shoot out a P0101 code. When you go up, it increases up to 13, and that big adjustment is so much air is entering that it has to go ahead and make that adjustment. It's normal when you're all the way at the high RPM range that it goes ahead and goes to 9.375, because it's no longer looking at the short-term data, and it's just going in by the manual input of the 9.37. So it usually goes up to 80 to 100 grams per second when you're at the high rev limit. So that's what's going to solve your issue. If you guys can get grommets and you're just trying to make a cheap cold air intake work, the first thing I recommend is just getting a grommet for here. It's not necessary, but I recommend it just for the fact that if you do have a smoke machine, it makes it so much easier to find for leaks. I cut this so I could find for the leaks, because it would keep leaking from these little seal points over here. So clocking it at a slight angle will help it, but ultimately you should also get a honeycomb for the front over here, because what's happening is so much air is entering and it's going from the underside of the sensor, causing it not to read what's going under here. So there's a bunch of extra air coming into the system. So at first I thought it was my throttle body spacer, and I made a gasket for it, and it was just a bunch of issues all at once. So I solved all my intake leaks, and I made sure all those are plugged up, and yeah, it solves the issue. So if you guys are having similar issues, cut it a few inches away, maybe about like an inch or two away, cut the pipe, and then clock it at a slight angle, and just keep working with it. Because it'll be slightly easier, because what you can do is you can undo this clamp and undo it, and then start turning it and looking at fuel trims to make sure those numbers are going up to what you need it to be. Because where you get the P0101 code is once the fuel trim hits over positive 20 and then goes back to regular. But if it keeps going over 20, that's where you're gonna get that P0101 code. And it's just because of the way that this piping is. Maybe if it was 2.5 inches, it would work a little bit better. But since it's a 2.75 inches, that extra, like those extra few inches just slide under. And that's what causes your fuel trims just to go so out of whack and go over 20 and then readjust itself. So I was having a really hard time finding it out. It took me about 6 months because I replaced so many other things because I thought it was like my front O2, then my downstream O2, and then I thought it was my fuel pump, and every single thing I replaced just made it a little bit better and better, but it ultimately did not solve the issue. It was literally just slightly clocking it. I kept cleaning the sensor, and I even redid some of the wiring because moving the sensor would cause it. So even if the sensor, even if the wiring is frayed over here, you should replace that wiring first and then go ahead and diagnose the mass airflow sensor. Because I already went through 3 of those mass airflow sensors trying to have it. Now I have a bunch of extra mass airflow sensors. But I hope that helps you guys figure out your issues. And if you guys need any help, just let me know. I'm just extremely happy that I don't have to deal with a code and I can go ahead and take my car to emissions.